Well, hello everyone. Here, show you right here is like a talk about this right here talks about is like the Matthew's future world that he makes and talk about for artwork and any type of works of art if like illustrations and designs anything like that based on like the Dreamweaver the Adobe Dreamweaver work but you see right here is with this like this example of HTML as well as for CSS. So that this right here would be example right here of like a starters document right here to where I would include right here's a few tabs and tags and it's like a divs or anything like that, title as well as the body and head and as well you're using the wireframe also. But on the other hand, that with this right here would include like some sentences right here, such as like yeah for information about details about if anybody like warrant or if you're going to have like a profile, if you're going to have a profile and then thinking about as to where with the you think that but whenever people have a profile, what do they think that more likely that any information that more likely that would contain of necessarily? And I talk about for the world's like for a future world for what you make is like anything that you make to where other people who take interest in what you do, especially, or if it's what you call just to help keep information on records, especially. But having here is for creative work and design. And another thing I can also mention is to where for how clients get to know the designer. So I can include that as well as for how well the clients learn about me for what I do. So that's just a thing that having a profile that contains information. Go ahead and refresh that right there. But you have right here some writing right here, and that this writing right here that I have right here is the header. It's like a between open and closing right here, and as well as the other stuff that you add on to that as well. And you have right here is that with this the sketch right here, and I know that for like anybody that's like known about very familiar with like Adobe Dreamweaver, or if you use like Mus or any other type of program, is to where that you would be working with anything that's based on for any type of designing programs as well. And they compared to, to a program like Dreamweaver that you would have these variety of settings right here for like say change your like the links. It's like to where that there was a project that was already created, but you think about as to where that yeah any information that would say that you open it up if you want to try to use that same information and try to convert it like to like a different type of you may not even have to change anything related to the file, but then just keep those settings to the original. And if there was a file that was created in Photoshop, but really that for my experience as a designer though is toward it yeah that anything that you may have been working on maybe from using like let's say like an old set of technology such as like if something that was drawn by on paper and then you want to like think about is toward it yeah it's supposed to maybe represent something. And this right here would be what you call as like a live view right here of a sketch right here of me right here. And I was thinking about doing some Photoshop work with this because really if anybody like warrant toward it, yeah, that some of this stuff right here is black and white, which I kept thinking about if I want to go ahead and add some color. But I want to talk about right here is a story right here of about back whenever I was young. This right here was me right here. Like I have right here is a television set right here. Me right here sitting down on this chair, and have right here's the bookshelves right here with these books right here. And one of the reasons why this Dreamweaver work was just to kind of show is that with this book right here, if most of us can see this right here, is that whenever I would open up a book, and I'm sure most bookshelves that most of us growing up from back in maybe the 1970s that we would have like a bookshelf at home or maybe where we were at or so that we would be able to take out a book or have a few books at home and we would be able to read them. But then think about how many of us would have a profile a profile that would contain information about us, about our research, about anything that we do necessarily. And nowadays it seems like to where yeah that people that professionals or any counselor, anybody that more likely would have a profile page just to talk about anything that's going on in their life, or if it's anything about professionals or anything like that. So that's just the thing, though, is to where with me, though, that since I was young, that yeah, drawing freehand, and this right here, which I know it can maybe use a little bit of Photoshop work, but if anybody wants to see the original right here, is that this right here will be like a microphone, and I know that back whenever I was young, that I was really big. It's like I was really interested in had like hearing my voice on a microphone. If anybody say that, yeah, if you were to speak in front of a bunch of people about something and think about as to where what do you think you would talk about, but this right here talks about right here is like a drawing right here of me right here if I were to be sitting down, and then just be what you call like the way I drew this the TV, and I drew the TV right here on the right side. I'm like, well, think about it. If I had enough room right here, I went and drew the TV right there, because if anybody say on the left side you have right here's the books right here. So if anybody were wanting to where, yeah, that they look at my drawings and they're like wanting to, well, how come you didn't, how come you didn't put a clock on the left side here? Or how come, hey, well, how come you didn't draw the details of the hallway, or maybe there's a kitchen right here, or where are you necessarily? I'm like, I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. So whenever you start drawing a picture, and then you're going to have people that's going to constantly ask you questions, but really that make any suggestions, but really about the whole purpose about being a designer, if that's what you call, is to where that, yeah, I don't know if it's what you call, people giving you a hard time about, oh, well, you did something wrong, you didn't include this, you didn't include that. So that's just the thing about a website, though, or if it's going to be taking really to like a profile or portfolio, such as for the jobs binder, is that anything that you do, and you're like Warren, to where that sometimes, you heard that before, is to where the teachers will probably say, is to where whenever you're just sitting down, just sitting there, just what you call just staring into dreamland, and people may think that you're not really doing anything. But really, I'm like, whenever people are just sitting here, maybe just sitting in dreamland, dream world or something like that, and people are like Warren, to where, okay, do something else other than just sitting there. I'm like, well, what do you think people are thinking about necessarily? And do we think that that could be maybe what you call is like maybe like a worse like for like dream, for like anything dream like for the Matthews a future world he makes. But I'll say about it right here, talk about for profiles. But you have right here is for HTML, and if anybody were to go to my screen, my library, it's like on screencast like for the Matthew 31, and you'll be able to look at some of my other web designing projects. Well, it's like some of my practice works, and you'll be able to see it's like some of my work that I put together using Illustrator and Photoshop work, and anything that you want to talk about in there. But but that's just the thing about having a profile, though, is that having a profile that if you're going to be using maybe a program like DreamWeaver, or if you're going to be using like Mus or any other type of a program made by Adobe, that you're going to use these programs, and just try to learn the basics about them. And I know that if anybody like Warren Tour, it may not seem too much like the clicker on the remote control to the television set, but I guess it's all about is to where you just really gotta, yeah, it basically requires to where that, like what you call it, the type of interest, and as well as your time for how long it will take, just to the willingness to learn how to use to get comfortable with the basics. But if there's really a better solution other than it's like to where it's something that you look forward to, or the fact about, yeah, somebody talked you into working a project, so they say that this is what you're going to be doing. If you got a problem with it, that's too bad, whichever it is. But on the other hand, that you have right here is like with this picture right here, and I know that if I say wanted to it, yeah, sometimes it takes about 8 hours or so, maybe up to 5, just to be able to complete like a document. And with this document, I did not give it a price, so I know that from another practice project that I was working on, that there's a way to do that, to where you can actually create, like, if you want to call it like a file, you create a file that's like a pro file that it's like a site. a file to where that you would want to keep a lot of the assignments all organized. If you want to call it like a root folder, if I guess if it's called like a root folder on DreamWeaver, but you would create like a file to where that anything that what you call that was not that created originally, or that any files that you want to place in the root folder, any folder that you would have, especially on the system if it's going to be a Mac or it's like PC. But you have right here is that you just talk about right here is like include right here is the information about the page right here, and if anybody were to be dreaming about it, is to where you have a profile and think about it, to where for based on for what I do as information goes, any other source of information. And if I were to go and say just like information, the R comes before say information. But anyway, click on enter, it goes to the next line. So that's just the thing. Anything that we want to say and talk about for education. I'll go ahead and say for higher, I could have. Anyway, I could have just used backspace for that. Higher education schools. So anything, if you want to list maybe the schools and maybe the hobbies, anything that keeps you busy on a daily basis or anything like that. So that's just a thing that if you want to include a few of those, so like if you have like a Facebook page or any type of social media sites, like page, from there. But click refresh from there. But anyway, this was like right there. Looks like right there. So this was right here was me right here, and if you want to say talk about for coding, like with coding that you're like Warren toward coding that this right here will be like a form right here to where that you would be able to gather up the information, and then the whole purpose about with my artwork, and we see right here is to where that ever since I was about maybe a year old, something like that, is to where that did I get that idea just by looking at a few books and thinking as to where anything that I want to do creative with my hands or anything like that. But I can remember whenever I was young that I would check books out at the library, and some of them were related to maybe making paper airplanes, and as well as other sorts of activities, as like using a stencil, graph art, or anything like that. Anything creative, and if anybody like wanted toward it, that it seems like to where that the whole purpose about what's required just to be what's called a designer. It's like anything about creativity, to where how to show the clients for what you're willing to do from starting by scratch, especially. It's like for any kind of cooking recipes or anything like that, showing others about about what you're good at and what you can do by your own time. And I know that for anything about it, it's like for Matthew's future work is what I usually say is to where other than like a coloring book. And I'm sure that we see right here is I use the crayon and in the pencil right here just to draw these right here along with the pen right here, just to be able to draw these outlines right here, this picture right here. This right here is if I were to be sitting down right here. Well, no shoes and socks on. That this was right here was me sitting down, and you have right here is a bookshelf right here. The bookshelf, and then you have some right here, some writing. It's like to say for the training, our time for what we know, so far as what the job goes, and understanding about creative work and design. For how clients get to know the designer as well, and for how well the clients learn about me, especially. So me being the designer, that I would write a few notes and think as I would include those, maybe if this was an example right here of a profile. So if anybody wanted to understand, look research about Dreamweaver, and you would have these different options right here. So, and I always also think about this too. One thing I did want to mention too, you gotta have these menu settings right here. But anyway, but why is it that we see you may hear about us to where if we're going to be watching a movie or documentary that's based on a book, and sometimes you warn to where why is it that maybe the profiles of the websites or the books have a lot more detail in it compared to if you were watching maybe a video clip or maybe a documentary, or if it's going to be anything about maybe movies with special effects. So that's just a thing that maybe the whole story could not be explained just using what you call this maybe just pictures right here, or if anybody that wants to understand a little bit more about for what the designer does, so they say is to what you have right here is a whole collection of books right here. So this was right here was a collection of books right here, and if anybody wants to, yeah, you could have maybe add a lot more color like you usually do, but I'm like, no, I didn't get too carried away. I actually was I was thinking about is to where using DreamWeaver and to explain to everybody here about is to where my creative work right here is to where that looking at a black and white picture right here and thinking about is to where if any kids were to say if they had access to the crayons and colored pencils and stencils or anything like that, that they would be able to color. And whenever we're looking at like anything like this right here, to where if it's drawn by scratch, and think about it, it's like a puzzle, to where that you actually color in for what you think that for being creative, like talk about say for to go ahead and color in the color right here, the TV, and then as well as the back of it. You want if you want to guess what TV make and model that is, and so the way I designed this TV right here, if it would have been that would have been back in the early 1980s or so. The TV makes that back then. So if anybody warns us to where, yeah, that you don't have all the new stuff, do you? I'm like, but I have some new stuff, but not all new stuff. But you see right here is that just kind of like I mentioned before, but then just using DreamWeaver is to where that for how I got the idea about why I wanted to choose for designing as a career. And if anybody warns us to it, yeah, that since you were born knowing about that you had problems, and what these one of these problems will be is toward that you may have some problems with creativity, but just showing about is toward about a goal is toward that showing about how much that you're willing to learn about your creativity, and showing about how other people about how you do it as well. But you see right here is, yeah, I included right here is the microphone right here, and I included the television set. So if anybody were worried already, yeah, especially your Photoshop work. But but you have right here is that with these different menus, and I know if I say, yeah, that image right here, HTML5. So if anybody say you include like a link to another internet site. So you have these different options right here for like Dreamweavers to where that which I know a project that more likely that would keep a student like me busy for at least a week, just to be able to get enough information together. But you see right here is for a profile based on the information that we know since we were a kid about our creative art, reading, writing, and training. So that's just a thing I want to put together right here is to where we're like warned to where that whenever we do get a profile, that what we think that I could be talking about necessarily. So whenever we think about this and thinking about right here is to where that really, does anybody really want to mess with all this documentation stuff and the coding? The coding basically means is to where that you would need to include like image source in a file, and as said, push a button, push a key on the keyboard just to be able to browse through the files. So basically, that yeah, you are what you call putting together, if you want to call it like a puzzle piece right here. The pieces that you made using other programs, and with those pieces that you're basically put into like a final finish, to a website. And I can use that definition, by the way, because I know like with any designers that they're like warring toward it, yeah, that you're used to what you call opening up something from a package and it's ready to go, but instead of working with about maybe 3 other programs, maybe there's like a small change that you would like to make, and then you just can't get the project done on the website right away. You got to go back and make a few changes. So that's one difficult challenge, I'm sure, for like anybody, any designer that they're going to have to go back and make a small change or so. But really, the whole purpose about being a designer, you want to get something done and over with, or just something to keep you busy for at least a year, maybe at least 5 years. Try to give it at least 5 years. You're like wanting to, or something to kind of get your mind off all the stress and anxiety, related to like anything that's based on between higher or lower expectations or so, is toward it anything that's like anything that kind of gets your mind off all the stress or so, that we're like thinking about is toward it anything that you just want to get some practice with, especially. So I know that being a designer, like with any type of a professional work, that we may think is toward it, yeah, that you're not a professional just because that you keep messing up or you're not doing the work right, anything like that. You're just going to go ahead and hire a professional, but still, that I guess that the professional could be used toward it. Yeah, anybody who's known knowledge, other people that know the work especially, and as well as whoever that has access to a certain source of data. So that's just a thing, though, is to where that number of means we may call for professional, but knowing about the work that for what we call is to where does that basically mean is to where zero mistakes, or does that mean is to where that the work that they see is to where that they see that is to where that goes by the requirements. And out of those requirements, they're like warrantor. Yeah, that most of all designers or anybody or any professionals that would have their ways of how did they produce something and how they introduce something and make something, but still that based on the information that we may provide on a profile and people that may warrantor, why do you have more than one or two contact numbers? Why do you have more than three blog pages or something like that? So you're like Warren toward it. The questions that they may ask may point out this toward that there's something wrong. There's something wrong, Mr. McGuire. Yeah, well, we see that you have more than one contact number. You're only supposed to have one or so, or maybe about you have a whole set of books right here. You don't need any more than three books or whatever. You don't need a big stack of them right here on the bookshelf. But one of the pictures I know I'm sure that most of us have seen was based on you have right here is with the bookshelf right here. And the bookshelf would probably stand at about right here, but I drew it right here so that way if I say that you didn't want to get cut off, like you have right here's me right here with the chair, and if anybody gets the basic idea right here, you have right here's a bookshelf full of books, and you have right here's a few more books. So I know back then I don't think my parents or anybody. I'm like, yeah, anybody that you were visiting or so, that if you had any books around that don't even know if you had that many books, but let's just say if you had a few books and then think about it to where that they let you read a book, or if you would check out a book from the library and think about any ideas that you want to get from there, and thinking about it to where being a book author, or maybe if it's about what you call something that you're reading about, and then you want to go ahead and take out a blank piece of paper and actually draw it and see see how far it goes from there. Black and white. Do you think you can use some editing on Photoshop or Illustrator or any other programs? Like using any other type of drawing utensils such as colored chalk or stencil or your pencils or anything like that. So that's just the whole thing about us. That back then I thought I was like wanting to be a carpenter that one time. But then think about it as to where if I just don't like the wood or the measurements, but still, the whole purpose about designer is to where being a designer is say something keeps me busy and something that's like you have access to a variety. Just like say if you want to say like if you want to give it like a toolkit, you have access to a toolkit. With the toolkit that you would have a number of tools where you allow you to fix a number of things. So that's just the thing about for anybody if you're going to be going to school to be a mechanic or anything like that. But still, with like a website that's designed to where it talks about anybody in professional, and think about if it's going to be maybe shopping malls or anywhere like that, and you're like warrantor that nowadays with the internet browsers that with DreamWeaver that be able to create a website talks a little about you and then about as to where that the jobs that you places that you worked or anything like that, any blogs. But nowadays I see that we are able to communicate with other people. It's like to where they read about your blog, and then they may post a comment about it, and then they may want to. They're like a little chat logo right there. Like if whenever you're signed in, I know Microsoft Word more likely has the same thing. To where if you're going to be joining online, if you're going to be signed in online, and then you're able to talk to maybe somebody else, another professional on the World Wide Web, and then they start talking about, hey, we seen your profile, nice work, or hey, I looked at your work and I think that's pretty neat, or something like that. So that's just the thing about it, is to where that anything about what we call like anything electronic binder, or anything that uses pixels or any type of art like that, is knowing about the future, about where the world of the future technology is going, so far as how we use our work and how we use our education. So whenever I look at this right here, do we look at right here, if this was right here was a stack of books right here on the bookshelf or so, and thinking about as to where that, yeah, does that have anything to do with maybe for higher education, or does that mean that you got a lot of stuff? And some people may say, it looks like you got a lot of stuff, man. Man, you looks like you got a lot of stuff. It's like it's unorganized. But but on the other hand, that you see right here is that with this right here, this work right here, DreamWeaver, and I know that if anybody wanted to, they're just kind of getting used to the program, especially, and so that's just the thing that I may mention before, is to where whenever you actually get a link, a URL link ready, just to be able to display whenever it comes to a final finish of a website, whenever you finally get the link about how it's displayed on the World Wide Web, on a web browser, and that's just the thing, is toward it, you're like wired toward it. That's basically a project that's live on the web, and then people who take interest in it, knowing about how to promote it, anything like that, and you're like wired toward it. Yeah, that seems to be what you call one of the easiest, compared to doing a lot of things by scratch, and or just like say starting from a template. But still, that if anybody wants to where like for coding, like the type markup language is that really the things that you can learn about the program about DreamWeaver, and as well as any other type of web designing or any type of designing programs, and they're the things that you can learn about. And we may think as to where that a lot of this stuff seems very complicated, and like I usually say, just like writing on a chalkboard, but still that if I were to what you call is like to where that if I were to spell, like if anybody say is to where that if I were to say is like so far as creative creative gentleman or something like that, if anybody say you creative gentleman, and maybe if I were to spell it wrong or so, and if anybody like wanted to, or yeah, if you spell it wrong and you had to spell it again, or maybe include like maybe a HWW for your world for the browser. So that's just the thing. If you were to like spell a few things wrong, and you would be able to do a spell check on it, especially. So that's just a thing that added in a few words, especially added in a few like the top I say for if anybody were like wanted to, or that yeah, that would anybody really want to be honest about as to where that would you include on a profile? On a profile as to where that yeah, any problems that you may have had to deal with, for 3 years of what you call therapy or maybe counseling or anything like that. Would you need to include that on a blog or maybe on any type of a website? And we're using DreamWeaver. Would you include any of that information on there? But some that may say that, oh no, I'm like, I think it should be kept private, confidential. But still, that anything that you may want to talk about, and if anybody were warranted, or that if anybody were probably think about that, they believe that that somebody is trying to push their work too far, that their work, really just cannot go any further than where it is right now, just because until that they get their degree, or maybe that until their grade scores start improving. So if anybody warns us toward it, if any of the teachers looked at this artwork right here and thinking about it toward it, that they actually believe is toward it, that they actually see the grades improving just by what you call is like to where that helping the student understand a little bit more of the storybooks, and as well anything that they want to talk about related to a book author. And so I mean, that's just the thing about me, is that that I seem to have a lot more detail than what I had from back in 1989, to be honest with anybody, really, that that I did not have access to all that stuff, even DreamWeaver back then whenever I was young. If anybody say that you had access to a television set, if you were lucky to have access to a television set, and maybe like a little handy book or activity book, but still that for like for anything about being a designer, though, is to where you would have access to much more, and you would be like anything that you did have access to, and you're like warranted toward it. Yeah, anything anything about creativity that you can think about, any ideas that keep the work going, especially. And that's just the way I think about it, is that whenever I started it, that it was just for that just main purpose, one main, only purpose as to why I was doing that task, until that other people seen that my work, and then they wanted to see some more work, and then they had a suggestion, and then they asked me to work more on this. And so this was right here was an example right here of me, if I were to draw myself, if I were to be sitting down, next to a few books, and have right here's a reading book, and the teacher may recommend, or anybody would recommend us to her to draw a background right here. Where are you, in your bedroom, or are you in the hallway, or are you in the kitchen? Where are you necessarily? And maybe you ought to go ahead and do a few measurements or something like that on the books. And so that's just a thing that for being a designer, that you're going to have it to where that that people that may clients that may talk like that, they're not really happy about what they see, and they want to see more improvements. But on your hand, that you may say those simple words as to where I did not include that on this activity. I thought about including it, but then on your hand, that I just thought that it was not necessary. It didn't take up too much time. It would take too much time, as well as if it was required. And I know, like with any designer like me, is whenever you're going to be working on something, you may not know what all the audiences and the clients that really want to see until they start speaking up about it. And that's just kind of a habit that I kind of thought about, is to where, like, try to speak up about something, about what you want to see, but still that, if anybody like wanted to, that's not for you to decide. That's for him or anything. But anyway, this right here, like if we want to see right here is the mobile view right here. So this right here would be what the screen would, this right here, what the website would look like from a mobile view, right? I think that's from a tablet. Go ahead, go to mobile right here. This right here, this looks more like from the mobile view. Some of these websites I have tried out before, and I can tell anybody here, some of these websites I have tried out before, and even on a mobile phone, on a mobile device, and this is basically, if anybody like wanted to it, this is pretty much, it's like, that for what you see, that keep thinking right here that that for the resolution, but anyway, each time that you're working something and you're like wanting to explore something, and you may see, okay, I don't know why I keep, I see something, I always see something wrong whenever I'm trying to work or talk about something or anything like that. But anyway, if anybody wonders to her, what do you see wrong? But I'm like, well, really, that I'm trying to find out about, because looking at a web, at a profile page, and you're like wondering to her about what to look like, whenever, if you're going to be using a different search engine, that you would know about, does it have the same look on it to it, or maybe a little different background or some sort. But anyway, but I guess that's enough with me talking. But really, talk about the basics about DreamWeaver. You have right here is the books right here, and a lot of the TV with the microphone. Anybody that wanted to, or is like if you want to learn some new things, and as I say, if anybody suggests, if you want to learn some new things, then maybe you make sure that it's available on the television, on VCR, or maybe DVD or Blu-ray copy or anything like that, or you better make sure it's available on the book size, on book, because if this person right here, they spend a lot of their time, even for hobby reasons, that they spend a lot of their time working books or maybe watching TV or some sort. But if anybody will warrant, or if you want to see any more information, you go ahead and check out just like for on screencasts as well as on my Behance page as well. But anyway, but they have it, and I know like with anybody who's going to be a student, that they may warrant or that if we're going to be want to know information, why is it? It seems like that a lot of times that books, why do books a lot of times have a lot more detailed information compared to anything else, really? Anything about maybe a picture, and I guess is it I guess is that true to where that the words, the language of writing, that just kind of explains a little bit more about the topic, is to where that if you're going to be writing yeah, if you're going to be drawing a picture or painting something, and then they would ask you to write at least about 3 or 4 paragraphs about it, or if you go on for about maybe 25 paragraphs about the drawing as well. And if I were to clue right here, is like for sitting at the chair, sitting at the chair and daydreaming about what ideas I think will work, plus anything that comes to my creative mind. So basically, that if anybody wonders as to yeah, what exactly are you doing whenever you're like sitting at the chair with but still that anything about higher education. But before I go on, but still that whenever I was working a project that okay, yeah, use backspace, or if I can just use the arrow. But anyway, for higher education. But anyway, but at this point right here, I'm like, yeah, if anybody say that if you're going to have like a portfolio and thinking that you want to write a few details about you on there, and thinking as to where that yeah, that this is what you want to talk about, about 25 paragraphs of anything that you want to say about hey, welcome to my page, this is what I know, this is what I studied, the list goes, like if you want to say it's like a it's not yada yada yada, but on your hand, any information that you want to talk about, especially about your future career, especially. And so I know like the basic point I'm getting, like yeah, about art. It's not just what you call about a coloring book. And I know like with any kids, they may want to have a few crayons and they color a picture, or they draw a picture, and about artwork though is towards something that which causes shows is toward it about the willingness about you for what you learned also, and then about the program that you're familiar with, and as well as how much that you know, and then your hobbies, the school that you went to, the jobs. It's like for if anybody say, and then how much money do you make? Like, do you make any of the big bucks? Like, well, I tell you one thing: as long as you do your taxes, like I say, use like anything about it, it's like any source of profile information that needs to be done first before think about this. But on your hand too, that's a possibility. But anyway, so if anybody like wanted to, yeah, between higher education as well as the big bucks, like wanted to, yeah, that really, do we think that people probably say, are people going to sit down and draw a picture to get attention, or are they going to say, dude, you're really just trying to make the big bucks? So it's like, say, yeah, between the Boy Scout troops and the Girl Scout troops or anything like that, or maybe the concert tickets, and you're like, wanting to, really, why did you whenever you were young, you were holding a microphone whenever you were very young, but then thinking about it to her that since then it's like, yeah, you looked at a microphone. Microphone was, I guess, if you want to call it, to where, according to maybe one of my photos, that I could have been holding the microphone with my left hand and holding the pencil with my right hand, and think about it to anything that's going to change the skills about for how we speak, and it's like how we sing as well. So you're going to have your left hand, like I could use my left hand, maybe be holding something, or maybe be to be carrying something, and then with my right hand I could be using that to do any other sorts of work, especially if it's going to be what you call, you say you may need one hand to hold the phone with if it's going to be over the phone interview or something like that. But that's just the thing about the bookshelf right here. This bookshelf I also want to mention about is to where the bookshelf that represents is to where that the World Wide Web, that we have a few of them to read, and then any information about based on any authors or anything like that that's going on the media, on the social media, and people may wonder to, why do you have a profile, and why would you want to include your information, some of your personal information on there? So that's just the thing. It's like you give each person's allowed where they can are given the opportunity to where they can set the privacy reasons also. But that's just the thing though, is that making sure that is the main goal about is to where helping other people understand about you, about me, the person Matthew, is to where anything about me that they would want to learn about. Other than this, is like to word it, yeah, that are we just talking about a book, or we talk about a person? And I say, well, a person, like, well, the person. I'm like, well, I didn't write the book. I just read the book. But then on the other hand, too, if I were to publish a book, but anyway, anything about what you cause anybody say that, yeah, any of those famous authors, if it's going to be, I don't know if Benjamin Franklin, I'm like any other type of a writer that, likely, maybe not all authors may have their college degrees or so, but on their hand, I say the type of skills that they would have had back then also, but for what we use now especially. But anyway, but just showing right here is like a little black and white, this right here would be a sketch right here of me if I was what you call in my bedroom, and or in the living room where I have like a bunch of books right here, and this right here will be like the source codes, HTML. So that's just the thing about coding, though, is the type of language. And I know, like with anybody, that you say that you may have you've done pretty well with the coloring and as well as the designing, but didn't know if I had some problems reading and writing, and with the reading and pronouncing, and sometimes with like any students, it's like saying, well, if you got a problem, then you deal with it. But sometimes it's like if you're going to have like a page, and then some that may weren't, to where you did pretty well on the page, but then maybe that you didn't do so well on maybe on the research or something like that. But anyway, giving a student that opportunity to where they would have their own time to study, and then they would be able to discover something in their, have their own space where they can study. But I guess the question goes by is to where that if you're going to be working with a bunch of clients, especially, that knowing about anything that you do, that they want to see that too, and knowing anything that they would like to see as well. But on here to talk about the purpose about designer as well. But other than that, I talk about say the for the future world for what we make. And talk about say for Matthew the man make 25 as well. But other than that, like Matthew is like 31. And thanks for watching. Have a great day.